Hello everybody and welcome to the second video. This time it's another speed painting, a landscape speed painting. The theme right now is winter and ice. By the time I will release this video, it's kind of fitting, but back when I did this, it was still September, so there was no sight of snow or anything. So I got myself some reference images. On the top right, you can see them still there. They're primarily for colors and for nothing else actually. Those are paintings, traditional paintings from Russian artists of the early 1900, I think. And I can give you the names right now. I'm sorry, I've forgotten. But they're already in public domain. They are really old, and I'm really careful not to use artwork that is still in copyright. And yeah, so I usually tend to take traditional artworks from painters, primarily from the 19th or the early 20th century. And right here I have some from two Russian artists. Well, as usually I start with making a sketch. You can see me doing some rough lines, and I thought myself, what will be the main elements? For me, the focus is the theme, winter, and in this regard also the elements. What I mean with that is, in winter you always picture snow, you always picture snowy mountain, but you also picture, for myself, I always picture the feeling you get when you go through snow, the particular density, the particular feeling from snow, which is really unique and there's nothing like it. And something else I wanted to make is water and ice. For me, these are three stages of water. You have fluid water in this lake or river or whatever. You have some ice on the beach, and some ice blocks in the water, and then you have snow. So you have three different variations of water, which were at this point I was really not sure on how to make it because I got no reference at all. It's been quite some time until I've seen snow. I mean, it was by the end of the summer, so I can't just look outside and say, oh yeah, that's what it looks like, that's what it feels like. So I'm painting it as I picture it in my mind. But at this point, I'm still sketching out the main shape of the mountains. As you can see, I picked some colors from the reference. I used the normal lasso tool. I'm not sure if I always give the correct names for the tools I'm using, because I use a German version, of course, and we call it a lasso tool, and I use it always for mountains if I want to get the rough shape, or for, as you can see here, from the foreground. This is my usual process. You can see me separating the background, the middle ground with the mountains and the lake, and the foreground with the snow and the way, so I can paint on them without having think too much, without worrying too much about getting across the border, so I can just fill it in. Right now you can see I've taken another image because I was not satisfied with the colors I've got from those two. And I have to admit, with this painting, it was really hard for me because snow and winter is something really difficult. I haven't done it that often, and I've had a hard time picking the right colors. But I'll get to that issue later on, even in more detail. Right now you can see me adding in the main shapes. What I usually do is make the main shape grayish for the cliffs, for the stones, and then I make an additional layer on top of that where I fill in the snow, because the snow gives the shapes, as you can see here. Wherever there's no snow, there's cliffs, and you can imagine this is a really hard angle, because everything that's flat, that keeps the snow, and everything else does not. So you can see me just filling out some blanks here and there, getting the main shapes. This is actually kind of a tedious process. It takes a lot of time, but I think the result is not that bad. And if you keep the layers separated, it gives you a lot of artistic freedom later on to add in details, but well, you will see it later on. There are 2 additional layers now for the forest in the foreground. These are, I think, personal custom brushes, but they're just right now to fill in the shape, so I can think about where the mountain ends. Well, not the mountain itself, but where the treeless mountain ends and where the actual trees start, because trees only grow up until a certain height, because over that it's just too cold and there's just little to no vegetation up there. And I've imagined this to be something like in the far north, like Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, Finland, something like this. I've never been there, but I'm always imagined some fjord up there with a lake and everything snowy, but with just big mountains in the background. But I didn't want to make the trees go all the way up, because I wanted to make the mountain seem like it's really throning over everything else, because it's just so huge and it dwarfs everything in the front. So because you're like from your point of view, you're standing on the right bottom with all the snow, and you're looking over the lake and all the way up, and you're just a dwarf in comparison. As something else I know that's too far ahead, but in the end I've forgot to restart recording, because the last 15 minutes about I did on another day, and I completely forgot to do the recording. So in the end I'll talk a little bit more about the finishing touches, because I can show them to you, but you will see that later on. I hope that won't happen again. Right now you can see me use a brush with a single tree and added some additional trees up on the mountain. And right now I usually start from, if I make the trees from a far distance, I brighten everything and then just make the darker top parts, in order to give you this sense like there's fog in between. I really like that the image of fog between forest, and you can see right now the closer they are to the viewer, the darker they get, because the dust cancels out the contrast and the color saturation. So I increased the darkness the closer it gets. And right now this is what I meant with adding keeping the snow in a separate layer, because right now I can just keep the transparent areas and just use a normal brush with a brighter kind of white in this case, and just paint where there's sun hitting the area, which gives all of this a lot more of feeling of 3D. So it's not just flat, you can see it gets some volume, and of course you can also see the shadows. Right now I have to admit I've made a mistake. Something I mentioned last time is don't go into detail before you get the main picture done. And what I did right now is I actually did detail the mountain before thinking this whole painting through. And I actually want to show you this episode. I don't like the finished painting. I like elements of it, but the painting itself is okay, I guess. But what I did right here is I got so focused on adding details to the mountain that I didn't paint all the elements through. And in the end, I have to say the composition doesn't really work, and I struggled quite a lot in the end. But at that point, it's really hard for me to clean it up, to make it better, to make it a good composition, because it would mean too much work. So don't forget the things. Don't forget to plan. Not plan, but just get the sense of the entire picture before you go into detailing. Don't make it as it can be rough. It's still just a sketch. The details can come later, but at this point I was just too ahead of myself, which, well, will become an issue. And right now I'm starting detailing the water. I've thought about a rather calm lake with rather regular waves. So it's no ocean or something like this. It's no strong river. And I wanted to make the water feel really, really cold, but also reflective. So you can, because depending on how the water is in terms of density, in terms of how dirty it is and how calm it is, the reflection changes. And I just wanted this white reflection of the ice. And right here you can see the footsteps on this side. And at this moment I was reading and saying, oh god, am I able to do this? Because snow is really, really difficult. Give it a try, please. Snow is wonderful. It looks great. It's a great element, but it's really difficult. And I had a hard time playing with it. But right at this point, I was like, yeah, I think it can work. And I just kept at it. Don't get too demotivated. You just have to keep at it. I always say stubbornness is the key to all art, because you have to keep at it. You have to fail. You have to lose sometimes. But if you stick with it, at some point it will turn out okay. And it's alright to make mistakes. As with me right now, I was not so sure if it works. I just made some areas of the snow and I said, yeah, okay, I think it works, and just went on to something else, see if that works. And I was like, okay. And I just got back and forth because I was at this point already struggling with the composition, if it will look good, interesting or not. So yeah, but right now I just add in details in the front area. I play around with the snow, try to give it some shape so it's not just a flat area, something I talked about last time with grassy plains. Same with snow. Snow is not always flat, so there was always some up and downs. And here I think about, what would ice look like? And I was thinking back when I was playing ice hockey on the lake, and if ice sounds strange now, but if ice is thin and gets wet, then it's a little bit more transparent. So I want to show this element. And I also thought for the composition, there were too few icebergs, ice rocks, I don't know. So I added in a few more to balance it out a little bit. And here you see me looking up new music. Before anybody asks, I always listen to music when I paint. What do I listen to? Depends. Sometimes if I want to paint something particularly, I want to get myself into the mood. So if I want to paint something dark and mysterious, I would paint something. I would listen to something accordingly. I most of the time listen to soundtracks when I paint. For this, I didn't listen to it at this moment, but I think if you want to paint something ice and cold, you can always think about listening to the soundtrack of Skyrim, for example, or whatever you think. Right now I'm listening to rather a metal band, because I don't know, that depends. But I usually listen to music every time I paint, and and I choose the music accordingly to what I want to paint. Because if I paint something rather sad and serious, it doesn't work if I at least for me, it doesn't work if I just get myself some happy music and it's just a contradiction for me. So it has to fit together. Right now you can see I added a little bit of dust and I started detailing the forest, which is almost completely at the lake. If you, something you can see here really good is if you paint with layers like I do, there's always the issue that it will look like cardboard. What I mean with this is you can always make a picture with cut shapes out of a cardboard like the mountain and glue it on a paper and then make another shape with a different color for the forest in front of it. But the problem here is you can see those are separate layers. They don't connect. There's no transition over them. This is something you have to be very careful about if you use layers, because you have to try to make it look as seamless as possible. Because in nature, even if there's a huge distance between two elements, you can still sense them being connected. So it doesn't add up if the foreground is too dark and the background or the middle ground is too bright in comparison, if it doesn't add up. And if you don't want those shapes to show up in the end, you have to work around this, which is why I always go back and forth with colors and saturation. And yeah, right now you can see at some parts you can see there's a distance by looking at the colors. You can see there's a difference between the distance, and at some elements it's much closer, which gives you kind of a sense of distance of what element is set in your realm, in your painting. Right now you can see me getting back to the background. I made some details on the mountains and the background mountain. Now I add in some clouds and try to find myself the right atmosphere. As you can see, I go back and forth. I add in different colors. I change the saturation on the mountains. But I'm at this point not sure where to go with this. I honestly am not certain about if this one works or not. I realized that by far too late I got caught up in the details and now I'm suffering. As you can see, I can play around. I want to change the focus because right now the focus is nowhere particularly, and the foreground and the background don't really add up. The colors just don't. They seem like they're from two different paintings. The foreground is much bluer, the background is less saturated and with a little bit of green. So those elements have to connect somehow. And right now I've got a feeling, no, they don't. And yeah, so I'm playing around. You see me taking a break every now and then, adding a lot of additional layers right now because I'm trying to salvage this painting. I wanna. I've come so far, so I'm too stubborn to give up. I wanna save it as far as I can. But to be honest, at this point, I was just too lazy to make a major change. So I just play around with the mood, with fog. Here I go a little bit over top. And I just play around, but I'm not certain where to go with this. What always helps in situations like this is take a break and flip the canvas. That helps a lot. If you flip it horizontally, vertically, whatever, you can see it a little bit better. You can get a different approach to the picture because even if it's just mirrored, it really seems like a different painting. And right now, as you can see, I've changed the color in the background, and here I'm thinking about what music to play, and back to painting. And I usually don't look up the music so often. That just happens when I'm not into the painting. And right now I'm not sure where to go with it. I gave up on finding the solution for now, and I came back to going to details because I thought about this gets my mind off things. So I'll just add up more details on the front so I could get something to do, and my head doesn't spin around too much, because when I concentrate on an issue for too long, you get blind. If I'm sure you've heard the term an artist's blindness. If you look at a picture for too long, you don't see its mistakes anymore, and that's what happens. But when I do something, I get my mind off things. And right now I'm playing around with the eyes. I'm actually really happy with how the eyes turned out. I don't know what you think, but for me, I got the feeling around I wanted to get, and I was so happy with this element actually. But yeah, as I said, I like several aspects of this painting, but the main image is okay, I guess. But right now I'm just adding the eyes, the icebergs, and I actually start to like this area, the area on the left down side with the water and the eyes. I really like this part. It really gets the sense of it's cold there. Don't go there. Don't go swimming. No good idea. Yeah, right now you see me flip the canvas and back and forth. I change the curves again, trying to fix it, but I'm really unsure on how to finish this one. Yeah, you can see me back and forth, because that's one of the main issues with this painting is it's just too unicolor. There's just almost black and white and a little bit of green and blue, but not a lot. What this does is you can use shape, contrast, and color for composition. Right now it's like the shapes more or less give you a sense of composition. The contrast does not, because there's no focus point. It's everything black and white more or less, or a little bit in between. And the color don't help either, because it's all just one color actually. So if you have these three elements, if keep them in mind while making a painting, again, shape, contrast, and color. These are for me main issues, main elements that support. Again, they support the composition. If one of them doesn't work, it's usually not a good sign. If two of them don't work, it's a bad sign. And right now, two of them just don't work. And yeah, as you can see, I always, at this point, I struggle with the image. Then I go back painting some details to get my mind off things. Because I don't want to spend so much time repairing this image. And yeah, like I said, in the end, I'm happy with many of the elements, how they turned out. But the whole image itself, I don't think it's really bad, but it's not good either. It's somewhere in between. And I was getting a little bit frustrated in the end, because at this point, I had plans made, so I had a limit. And I actually wanted to make it completed and until this moment. And I was like, okay, I'm running out of time. Maybe I can get it. And at this point, I slowly start to realize, no, I don't. I can't finish it. I can finish it, but not to the expected result. So I just try to get as much done as possible. But at this point, I realized I need to take a break. And I actually did take, I don't know, a couple of days until I got back to this one. I made some other ones in between. So, yeah. But then I thought, never mind, just stay with it. Because even if it's no success in your eyes, completing something is a success in itself. Even if you're not happy with the result. Because you learn a lot by doing. It's better to do something and fail rather than don't do it at all. Because if you don't give it a shot, you never learn anything. And it's harsh, but failure is the best teacher. If I make something wrong, if I make it, next time I make it right. Or at least I get closer to getting it done right. And in this particular one, I was really, that's what I tell myself looking at this recording. And that's something really important. When I was younger, I just started like 100 paintings and finished none of them. At some point, I just said, at least for the most part, I want to finish them, even if they suck. It doesn't matter. The process is all that matters, because that's the part where I learn. And now you can see time is running out for me. And this is now the finished painting. As I said, I'm sorry, I forgot to start recording in the end. Again, when I got back to it. As you can see right now, I don't think it's a bad painting, not at all. But if somebody gave it to me, I'd say, good, but the composition's a little bit weird. I don't know what to look at and what's the interesting area. And in the end, I just tried to make the mountain be lit by the sunlight to make it a little bit brighter, so it stands out more. But that's just a cheap way to get out of the situation. It's not the best painting, but I wanted to share this one with you as well, because, as I said, you learn by your mistakes. And don't get me wrong, I don't think this is a bad painting. It's just not what it could have been. And maybe at some point I'll try something similar again, start from this one, look it up and say, okay, I'll give it another shot. Let's see what I come up with. Maybe next time I'm satisfied with what I do. But for all it's worth, it was hard to make, but I'm really happy I made this one, because I learned really, really a lot. Even if it's just how to make ice, how to paint snow, how to, I don't know what. It doesn't matter. I painted, I learned something, and I enjoyed the process for the most part, and I don't regret anything. And that's all I can say to you. Just keep at it, keep on painting, and don't be frustrated if it doesn't work at the very beginning. 1 out of 2 paintings of mine don't work, and that's just normal. But keep on going. I'm looking forward to hear what you have to say. Give me feedback, comments, wishes, suggestions, anything. And hope to hear from you soon. Bye bye.